Hey guys, what's up? MurderofBirds here, and today for this video, I'm going to be giving you guys my analysis/review of the RWBY Volume 4 character short trailer that came out last week from Rooster Teeth. It is official. I am so hyped. We are less than 2 weeks away from RWBY Volume 4's Episode 1 premiere, and all along the way we are getting more promotion, more excitement, more hype, more news, information, merchandise to lead us into, what has become RWBY month. And I'm very much excited to be bringing all of this information to you guys, and thank you guys so much for the support. But from this trailer alone, we've got so much new information regarding the refining new look of RWBY Volume 4, which seems to be the standard for the series moving forward. We get a taste of the wild side of the world of Remnant outside of the kingdom's walls and protection. We learn more about RWBY and her growth and improvements to her combat skill and such. During the time skip, we learn more about the intellect and the revampment of the creatures of Grimm, which seem to be more sinister and evil and ominous than before, which is the most exciting part of this trailer. And ultimately, this trailer just screams hype of what we can expect, of what we can look forward to, and things that we can't even perceive based on how Volume 4 is going to, shock the hell out of all of us. And I do want to mention that this video is out a bit late. During the last couple of days, Rooster Teeth has been holding a lot of RWBY-based information and news over at New York Comic-Con with promotion, information, news, updates, and things of that nature. And I am currently working on a video for that you guys will also be getting in the next couple of days. So that's mainly why this video is out so late. But ultimately, let's get into the nitty-gritty. I hope you guys enjoy. Leave me your thoughts in the comments, and let us begin. So the scene opens up with Ruby Rose walking through a densely wooded area in the middle of the night. For some reason, Jean, Ren, and Nora are nowhere to be seen, and it appears that maybe she's doing some recon work or doing some early scouting, looking up ahead to see if there's any opposition or signs of life. And from this opening, I have to give compliments to the animation team. You guys did an awesome job on the trailer in its entirety, but just everything that stood out, especially the refined new look of the series, the lighting, the attention to detail, the shading, the particle effects. Everything just really ebbed and flowed really well for the entirety of the trailer, and I was constantly in awe of everything that I was seeing. The fire, the moonlight in the background, the attention to detail on the grass, the trees in the background, the ominous sounds, the Grimm's revampment. Everything else just screamed to me like, holy shit, improvement. And like I said, detail is a lot more noticeable, especially on Ruby's cape with her rose pendant that she has. It's metal, and it has a reflective property that reflects light and shade, which comes off as a lot more realistic. Lighting is a lot more natural from the shade of the trees, the moonlight in the background overlooking the landscape of RWBY reaching the cliffside. And like I said, the ebb and flow of the tone was just perceived perfectly in kind of giving us a lot of ominous vibes from the intro and what we were expecting. And from this, I couldn't help but feel like I was watching a tribute, or an homage, if you will, of the original Red trailer. It felt very much like that from everything that I was watching. A lot of the set pieces were callbacks to the original trailer. The music even kind of gave me a feeling of the Red Like Roses OST from back in the day. Of the set pieces, you have a cliffside, you have RWBY walking through a wooded area, you have her eventually getting into a mob fight with a bunch of Beowulfs. And it very much felt like the spirit and references of Monty, of the roots of RWBY, with the first Red trailer that started everything, is apparent and is, kind of transcended over to Volume 4, and I really did love that. So from the cliffside transition, we get a scene of a burning village in the distance that is overrun with creatures of Grimm fleeing victims, and it seems like that we're getting a lot more of the set pieces of the world of Remnant. For those of you who don't remember, we got reference of these kind of nomads and villages from the kingdom's world of Remnant.
There are still those who choose to venture outside the walls of the kingdoms. Roaming nomads and small villages are not uncommon, yet neither is their tendency to disappear overnight.
And I think it's pretty cool that we're getting a callback 2 volumes ago of a World of Remnant segment of literally this village being destroyed overnight, from the events that happened of RWBY Volume 3 transitioning to Volume 4 with the world being thrown into chaos and turmoil and people not knowing who to trust and being on edge. I think that's what's causing the Grimm to become more stronger, more prevalent, and to be, more relentless with these ongoing attacks. And maybe this village was just in the wrong place at the wrong time, or maybe it is a result of current events that are going on. Nonetheless, we get to see RWBY spring into action, and we finally get a glimpse at Crescent Rose after all this time, who in all honesty has seen better days. From the damage, the wear and tear of Crescent Rose, I wouldn't be surprised if RWBY has been fighting Grimm every single day since her journey to Haven. And when you really think about it, I feel like she's learned a lot more and has grown from these battles, and the fact that the real world is scary and the real world is out to get you if you are a huntsman or huntress destined to fight creatures of Grimm. And from just seeing RWBY going through all this in the trailer, I can't help but feel like the words that Crow said to her is resonating more than ever.
And don't think for a second that graduating means you're done. Every day out there is worth a week in this place.
And I will say how RWBY decides to actually just go into the fight is so badass. She leaps up into the air and clips onto a Nevermore, and she just looks like a fucking, like a dragon riding, Grimm riding badass. And I immediately recalled Volume 1 because in Volume 1, if you guys don't remember, she also rides on a Grimm. We don't know how, we don't know the events of how that ended up happening, but her and Weiss ended up catching a ride on a Nevermore when it came to them having to find their relics in the Emerald Forest. And I thought that was kind of a cool parallel, and I'm not sure if that was Rooster Teeth's intention to kind of have another callback to Volume 1, but I thought that was pretty cool. It was like, wait, RWBY's ridden on a Nevermore before, but she looks a million times more badass doing it now. And the particle effects, like I said, of the rose petals coming off of her cloak, the ominous like black mist coming off of the Nevermore, you can see the feathers more detailed. It just looked fucking awesome. And the badass just follows up. She ends up clipping the Nevermore's entire wing off and crash landing on one of the statues of this courtyard area. And she looks gorgeous. I think that the character models of not just RWBY, but the villagers as well, and the rest of Team RWBY that we see at the end of the trailer are just spectacular. RWBY actually has a complexion. She's not ghostly white. She has a nose. She actually has a nose on her face. Every character has lips, and she just looks more lifelike. She looks more real. She doesn't, not to knock any credit off for the previous volumes, but honestly, as the improvements get better and better from Volume 1 to 2, from 2 to 3, the previous volumes just end up looking like shit in comparison. I'm sorry. And I mean that in the best possible way, but I can't help but feel like the series is becoming more of like for any of you guys have seen the anime, Black Rock Shooter, like that look, that style, and it just shows off so well. And I know a lot of people are very to and fro about this animation change, but it looks incredible. I'm so in love with it. And the immediate follow-up to that has to be the Creatures of Grimm. The Creatures of Grimm, aside from world building, aside from like plot and character development, I think the Creatures of Grimm in any aspect surrounding them are the most exciting part of RWBY for me. I very much appreciate a sense of threat, a sense of danger, a sense of risk. It makes our investments with the characters much more stronger. It makes our bonds much more stronger with the characters. It makes us kind of feel what they're feeling and going through what they're going through. And if you don't have a sense of danger, if you don't have a sense of alert or urgency or risk or threat, what's all that investment for? What's the emotional attachment for? What's the resonance for? And I love how Rooster Teeth is going above and beyond, especially with the revamped look of the Grimm. They look sinister, they look ominous, they look destructive, they look incredible. And I feel like I'm fanboying right now, and a part of me is, because that's what, when you look at the Grimm side by side, Volume 1's Grimm to Volume 4 Grimm, it's like, holy shit, like the details are there. I love the ominous kind of black mist that's emanating off of their bodies, the red wandering eye kind of effect of the light that travels and follows the Grimm's eyes as they move. It just screams like, I can't wait. And we see it with the Nevermore Grimm, we see it with the Beowulfs, we see it with the new Beringel Grimm that I'll talk about in a second. But the fact that we're going to be able to see this with the Ursa, the King Taijitu, the Deathstalkers, the Borbatusks, the Goliaths, the Creepers, and any other Grimm out there, the fucking Grimm Dragon? Can you imagine what the Grimm Dragon will look like if it ever comes out of that stasis form, or any other ancient kind of Grimm? It's incredible. I fucking love the revamp work. And then we immediately get into the bread and butter of RWBY, in my opinion, which is the fighting, the action, the kind of hype moments that get you really riled up to see more fights in the future. And again, it very much was akin, and it kind of reminded me a lot of the original Red trailer, of RWBY fighting against a bunch of Beowulfs. She's inspired by Red Riding Hood, going up against a bunch of big bad wolves. And I loved it. I thought it was great. One moment that kind of stood out to me entirely was kind of the effects that Rooster Teeth is going into when it comes to showing off, I would say an emphasis on RWBY's speed semblance. We've seen in Volumes 2 and Volumes 3 how RWBY utilizes kind of like her cape in the form of like she's like floating around with it. And obviously that's not the case, but I think that's just an emphasis on RWBY's been using more of her semblance during her travels, and she's honed into more or tapped into more of its power and potential and becoming a faster, more agile, more free-form kind of style of a fighter. And the huge wow factor was the fact of her going up against one of the Grimm on the building and how she split herself into 3 different forms and got behind the Grimm and shot it in the head and then ricocheted off of the Nevermore back to the courtyard. I thought that was incredible, and I don't know if this has any type of influence or inspiration. For any of you guys out there who have played Infamous Second Son, there's a character in the game called Delsin Rowe. His ability is he's able to turn his body into combustion or smoke, and he's able to phase through things, and there are certain points where he can turn his body into certain like aspects of smoke and phase through things, similar to how RWBY was able to break herself apart and then come back together. I don't know if that is an Infamous Second Son reference, but that was the first thing I thought of, was Delsin Rowe and his kind of smoke-like abilities. And from the end of the skirmish with the Beowulfs, I think it's pretty awesome that Rooster Teeth also capitalized on showing us a level of intelligence with the Grimm. We already understand and know that if Grimm live and survive their encounters, they become more effective killers, learning from their past mistakes and gaining a sense of intelligence, whether it be strategic, tactical, what have you. And that Beowulf Grimm was actually on top of the building, using the environment to its advantage, actually throwing bricks, because it is close range. It has to get close to RWBY in order to fight her. So instead it actually just threw bricks at her, threw boulders, until she made her way up to him. And again, that's a great attention to detail to know that the further you get from civilization, from the protection of the kingdoms and the, the natural barriers and stuff like that, maybe even the further you get from civilization, the nature of the Grimm tends to change. And that's something that I'm definitely going to get into and talk about right now. So we got introduced to a brand new Grimm type during this trailer that went into a 1v1 with RWBY, and it was very neck and neck. It was very exciting to see the threatening increase in the level of this Grimm's intellect and its strategy and tactics, and how that it was dealing with RWBY, and how RWBY was actually struggling for the first time in a while when it comes to Grimm encounters. The concept of the Beringel Grimm looks pretty awesome too. It has bone structures around its entire body. It had cuts and scars on its front armor plating. It actually is missing one of its eyes and part of its facial structure. And from the concept art too, it also shows that it has burned skin on one of its shoulders that kind of shows an inner red kind of glow, which that's very strange. I'm not sure if that is considered the life essence or the life energy of the Grimm, because we don't know the origin of the Grimm or where they come from, but it's really cool to know and see that that kind of effect is within the Grimm themselves. From this design of the Grimm, we also see like an iconography of some sort, or a branding, if you will, on its back. And I've noticed that a lot of Grimm kind of have this, usually on the skull part of themselves, whether it's the King Taijitu, the Borbatusk, the Ursa, and stuff like that. There's different types of branding for every Grimm that actually has bone structure. So I guess the older a Grimm gets and the more mature and evolved the Grimm becomes, this branding becomes apparent over time. And I don't know what the significance of it is. I don't know if this has any connection with Salem, because the cape on her back does have kind of a similar iconography kind of design that's also apparent, that is white with red markings that was on the glove that Cinder used when she took Amber's Fall Maiden powers, which also harbored some kind of portal for a beetle type of looking Grimm. So I don't know how all of this is interconnected or how all of this relates, but I thought it was worth mentioning. But like I said, this Grimm is a threat. Like, RWBY was actually giving it her all, fighting with Crescent Rose, using the bullets, and this Grimm had like an answer for everything. Initially, RWBY actually goes to hit it with Crescent Rose, and the thickness of its skin along with the bone structure kind of let it just eat the blow, and actually gave RWBY a sense of, holy shit, I need to get away from it. It actually punches her across the freaking courtyard, which is nuts, and then it takes battle on the rooftops. And one of the craziest things that kind of just made me go crazy with speculation and thought process was how smart this Grimm is. Well, gorillas naturally are already smart, but the fact that this Grimm is just like on another level when it comes to thinking. There was a point where RWBY is on the roof, she's overlooking, she's she's reloading Crescent Rose, giving her smirk and whatnot, and she's shooting at the Grimm from the top of the building. Now you have some Beowulfs in the background, you have the Beringel who's, trying to avoid fire, and he decides to do something very interesting that I'm like, huh. Two things are going through this Grimm's mind. It's on the ground level. RWBY has a vantage point, shooting down from them and giving suppressing fire to keep them in check. This Grimm decides, I'm gonna grab one of my Grimm buddies, this Beowulf, and I'm gonna throw it at her. And naturally you would think, wow, that's really savage, that's really primitive of this Grimm to do. No, this Grimm is thinking strategically. This Grimm knows that it has to get close to RWBY in order to kill her. That's its entire process, that's its entire function, that's what it's meant to do. It's trying to get to RWBY to kill her. RWBY has to keep her distance, obviously. So this Grimm is thinking, I'm gonna throw one of my buddies at her, giving me enough time for her to react to close the gap. On top of the fact, this isn't some rock or something that I'm throwing, this is another Grimm. Its objective also to kill this huntress. So it throws the Grimm, and one of the details, again, attention to detail, one of the details was, as the Grimm is being thrown, it has like a centripetal kind of effect, and it carries that momentum all the way till it reaches RWBY, and it's about to slash her. Had RWBY not killed the Grimm, she probably would have died. And because she retaliated and reacted with, I gotta take care of this dude that's flying at me, the Grimm was able to close the gap. I don't know if any of you guys out there kind of relate to the same thing, and I instantly had this thought process once Salem was introduced at the end of Volume 3. But when I think of the creatures of Grimm, I can't help but think of the Locust from Gears of War. So I mentioned this in my Chapter 3, Episode 12 reaction, but based on Salem's speech at the end of Volume 3 and essentially seeing her and everything, she instantly gave me Gears of War vibes. She gave me like the Locust Queen vibes of Gears of War, of the Gears of War series. And I don't know, for any of you guys out there who don't know, Gears of War is an Xbox exclusive franchise. Within the series, there are these species known as the Locusts, who are the greatest threat to mankind. They are the closest thing to mankind's extinction, and they play a pivotal role in the wage of war between humans throughout the trilogy. And in many cases, I kind of consider that like a parallel to the Grimm. The Grimm attack humans and all of their creations. The Grimm are the greatest threat to mankind, and a lot of the fact of, we don't know a lot about the Grimm. We don't know about the Grimm system. We don't know who commands the Grimm, where they come from. Do they have a chain of command? Do they have a hierarchy system? Is Salem considered the queen of the Grimm? Is there a king of the Grimm? And in my eyes, I kind of use the Locust system to kind of fill in those gaps. For Gears of War, Queen Mira was the queen of the Locust, and similar to Salem, Queen Mira also had characteristics about her that made her look part Locust and part human, kind of like a human-Locust hybrid, and that's the same thing that we see when we see Salem. We don't know if she's a Grimm turned human, if she's a human turned Grimm, or if she's a hybrid between the two species. And when it comes to the origin of the Grimm, where they come from, who commands them, and things of that nature, that's very iffy. We don't have that kind of information, but based on the Locust structure, the Locust had a chain of command. The Locust had a hierarchy system. You had the queen at the top. Below her, you had General Ram and Scourge, who are basically the left and right hand of the Queen and the whole Locust army. From there, you would get down to the more grunty level and higher echelon levels of the Locust. You had Grenadiers, you had Drones, you had Boomers, you had Cantus, you had the Theron Guards, who are more of like the royal guards that protected the Queen. And again, when you look at the Grimm, you kind of see that similarity. You see like the early, primitive, younger version of Grimm with the Beowulfs, the King Taijitu, the Deathstalkers, the Nevermores, and you see them in all different variants and forms. But then you get to the more higher echelon of Grimm. You see this Beringel, one of the first of its kind, who's very intellectual, very smart. You see more ancient status Grimm, like the Grimm Dragon, and you see someone like Salem, who may well be the queen of the Grimm. So in my eyes, I honestly really hope and feel that with this Berengel's performance, with seeing, you know, instances of ancient Grimm like the Grimm Dragon, seeing someone like Salem, we will eventually learn about the hierarchy system, or the system in general of the Locusts, where they come from. Do they have a form of a command system? Is there more higher echelon Grimm out there? Are there Grimm out there that know the human language, can understand the human language, can think like humans, can actually go full one-on-one, toe-to-toe with a huntsman like Crow or Ozpin and Glinda and have a chance of winning? All of the information is extremely exciting, and that's one of the biggest things that I look forward to out of the Grimm, out of anything. I want higher echelon Grimm. I would love to have an instance where there are Grimm humans, or humanoid Grimm, or Grimm that take the appearance of humans when it comes to being stronger fighters. And again, the Locusts are the direct link to that are instantly the first thing that I thought of when I thought of Salem and the Grimm as a whole. And like I mentioned before, RWBY is definitely utilizing her speed semblance a lot more, whipping around this Grimm, kind of getting chip damage hits in here and there, which is why it takes her so long to actually finish off the Grimm. The Grimm is very tough, it has thick skin, it has armor plating, and it's even going as far as to use that armor plating to, block a lot of the oncoming bullets from Crescent Rose. I think the fact of RWBY zipping, in the sky and whipping all around the Grimm kind of shows that she is getting more in tune with her speed semblance, but the fact of the matter is this was more of like a dexterity type of character versus an endurance and defensive type of character. character, where the chip damage wasn't really doing it that much. And you know, while RWBY was kind of getting her ass kicked here and there, I love how it all came out in the end of RWBY, again, utilizing kind of like an over-exaggeration of her speed semblance and kind of like the rose petal effects that RWBY's always used, with busting through that window, you know, on the top of the church, and actually using like a tornado rose type of semblance, unhinging her scythe and spearing the Grimm right into the ground. I think that was a great way for her to actually kind of get the upper hand, especially when it came to tripping up the Grimm, because it was really top heavy. But I love how the whole fight turned out. Again, this was a great display of RWBY's growth and maturity in terms of fighting and combat in general, the nature of Grimm in the wild, and actually giving us a higher sense of threat level when it comes to them, and just everything else in general, the animation, the look, the style, all that stuff. And at the end of the battle, RWBY's contacted via her scroll by Nora, Ren, and Jean, who are nearby, who are on their way to reach her. And I think it's pretty cool that we get to see that the fact that they actually implemented the detail that the scroll is communicating locally. As we know, the beacon tower had fallen, which cuts off the communication for the 4 main kingdoms, and because the Grimm Dragon is there, attracting more Grimm, there's no way that the system can be brought back online to reconnect communication for the 4 kingdoms. So the only kind of connection that they do have would probably be from the small relay towers that link communications locally. So I really like that attention to detail as well. And the fact that eventually we will be seeing Team Ranger all together and whatnot, it was pretty awesome to see them there, hear their voices, see early designs of their concept. Nora and Ren have longer hair. Jean, for the most part, looks the same, but I will get into more details of Jean, his potential look in Volume 4 and stuff like that in a later video, so be on the lookout for that. And then at the very end, we do see Team RWBY in its entirety. We see RWBY running off to fight more Grimm. We see Weiss, who seems like she's down in the dumps back at home. Blake is out in the wild on the run doing her own thing, and Yang is back home on patch, looking very depressed and out of it. And I also did a video for that, their final concept designs and my overall thoughts and opinions on themselves, their own individual trials and tribulations and journey that they should be going on during this volume, if you guys want to check that out. But ultimately, I really do feel like I rambled in this video. I do apologize for that. Leave me your thoughts. What did you guys think about this character short yourselves? Any opinions, anything I did or did not mention? Leave me your thoughts of the quality, how you guys felt about the video. I honestly feel like I rambled a lot, but at the end of the day, it was very exciting to be able to do this, to be able to do the reaction, to do the review, to do the, you know, the live stream discussion, and I look forward to doing more of this stuff with you guys. Thank you so much for the support. I'll look forward to seeing RWBY Volume 4 with you guys, the intro, the first episode, the World of Remnants, everything else in between. Thank you guys so much for the support, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.